I've been following this Kavanaugh stuff going on in the States a little bit, mainly because I have no choice. Every time you turn on a computer, there it is. Um, and let me be perfectly clear, I believe the accusers. I wasn't there, I don't know what happened. Uh, I could be wrong, but it certainly seems credible. And I'm sure there's a personal bias at play. I mean, I'm willing to bet that part of the reason I believe the accusers is that Trump supports Kavanaugh, and Trump is well known to be a misogynistic pig and probably guilty of many assaults on his own right. Um, it's extremely difficult for people to come forward. Why do people wait so long? Why, you can ask all these questions, but it's well established. A lot of people never come forward at all. It's humiliating, it's painful. There's the fear of not being believed, there's the fear of being dragged through the public. There are a million reasons. I applaud these women for standing up and saying, it's not right. This man can't be a Supreme Court judge. He just, and to think that some people still support him, it just blows me away. But I wanted to make this short video, and I know the lighting's terrible. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I want to make this short video just to make a couple of points about accusations like this. Because whether they're true or not, they can ruin lives. Now, when I was a much younger man, someone tried to assault me, a doctor. He thought he could get away with it. He thought I wouldn't say anything, or he thought I wouldn't realize what was happening. But I was lucky. Even at that age, I wasn't a teenager. I was an adult. I was a grown man. I was young, but I was 6'2" and over 200 pounds. And I was able to make it very clear to this doctor that if he tried something like that, he was going to be taking a shortcut from the third floor to the parking lot. So it didn't happen to me, but I didn't report it. I was confused. There was some question in my mind as to what had happened. It was very humiliating. And it was years, decades even before I told anyone. And that haunts me because I know if he tried it with me, he tried it with somebody else. What if I'd been a 15-year-old kid? What if I'd been 5'2", not 6'2"? What if I'd been someone who was less able to defend myself? The man was a predator, and he's a doctor I only ever saw once because I refused to ever see him again. And this was in Yellowknife, and I don't even remember his name. So there's very little I can do about it now. But it haunts me that I didn't report it, and it's a major regret. I believe that, certainly the majority of sexual assault victims are women, and an alarming number of women, that I have known and cared about in my life have been victims of assaults or attempted assaults. And, I have no patience for that. I have no tolerance for that. I think these people should be locked up. These predators should be locked up and have the key thrown away. Now, unfortunately, all of that being said, there is such a thing as a false accusation. And as an example, I'll give you another personal story about myself. When I was a student teacher in my early 20s, I was teaching a grade 8 math class. It was toward the end of my practicum. I happened to be in a classroom that was right next door to the office. This grade 8 girl who had only attended sporadically, I really didn't know her very well, came into class late. I was standing at the front of the class teaching a lesson. The door to the classroom was at the back. I asked her to go to the office and get a late slip. The office was right next door. She walked out the door. Instead of turning right to the office, she turned left, and I never saw her again. I mean, literally never saw her again. Like, she didn't come back before my practicum ended. Sometime later, I got a call from the high school principal, someone who I had known for a long time, and he knew me. And he asked me to come in and talk to him, said it was serious. And apparently this girl had told a counselor to excuse her skipping class because, of course, I was a student teacher. I followed all the rules. I reported her for skipping class. She accused me of putting my hand on her breast, and she said that's why she left. Now, this isn't a case of a misunderstanding. This isn't a case of unclear intentions. This isn't a case of, incidental contact that I didn't realize or anything like that. This is an outright, blatant lie. I never went within 20 feet of that girl. Fortunately for me, there were 25 or 30 students in between us who could verify that if it came to it. Um, this was a case of a troubled girl trying to blame her own behavior on somebody she thought would be an easy target, a student teacher, and get away with something, and not realizing, I'm sure, that this would have ended my career before it began had it gone further than it did. This would have ruined my life. Had I not had, the principal who, and he didn't just, I'm sure he didn't just take my word because he's a professional. I'm sure he believed me, but I'm sure he also investigated. Had he not handled it well and handled it discreetly, that could have ruined my life right there. That momentary decision on her part to tell a lie. And, like I said, from what I understand, she was a troubled young woman, and I hope she got the help she required. And, this is uh, closer to 30 years ago than 20 years ago. I'm sure she's, probably got kids of her own, and hopefully she has gone on to, deal with whatever issues she was facing in her life. But she almost ended my teaching career before it began, just in that one instant. Now, that hurts me. It also hurts the other victims because it gives ammunition to the argument that sometimes accusations are false. It makes people question when somebody who legitimately has been victimized come forward. Oh, well, that person wouldn't do it. He's respectable. He's responsible. And it's really is a shame. It's like crying wolf, but in a terribly, terribly serious situation. Like I said, because it worked out okay for me, and I went on to teach for over 20 years, and it did not ruin my life. Because of that, I don't really bear her that much ill will. Like I say, I hope she got the help she needed, and I hope she went on to live a fairly productive life. She probably, I was pretty young. She's probably only about 10 years younger than I am. She's probably close to 40 by now. Whoever she was, I don't remember her name either. Um, this is a very, very serious matter. And it's not something to trifle with. It's not something to toy with. You're toying with people's lives. That being said, my tendency, like I suspect probably most people's tendency, is to believe the person making the accusation, even though I've been in the situation myself of being falsely accused. And, excuse me, knowing how difficult it is to come forward, I really applaud those who do, even if it's years and decades later. And even if it's this Kavanaugh character, even if it's Donald Trump himself, even if it's Bill Cosby, finding out that about him broke my heart. No matter who it is, tell the truth. And I encourage anyone in a position, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a school principal, I encourage anyone to, take the claim seriously and see if there are other people involved. Like I say, I sit here now, I'm almost 50 years old, and one of the great regrets of my life is that while I protected myself from a predator, I didn't protect everybody else from him.